Hey, it's me, and today I want to make the cleaver from Bloodborne, because I have some spare time, but also because I started playing Bloodborne and I'm hooked. I also made a blueprint for this, you can find it in the description below. It's basically two parts, the cleaver itself, and it has the handle. And in the game you can also see it open, like transform. I want to do that as well, but I don't want to use a laser cutter to achieve that. I'm gonna do everything by hand, because if I can't make that in here, in a space like this, you won't be able to at home either. So everything by hand. Let's just start. First things first, the blade. I'm gonna start with ultra high density foam. This stuff is like the best for any prop, but also it's the worst to cut. Like, it's thick and stiff, and trying to cut through it is like cutting a phone book with a butter knife. But hey, the cleaver's design is really rough, so it kinda helps out. Okay, so we got our basic blade pieces, and this metal part, this is where the magic happens. Except it's not magic, it's just a rod. I'm using a shapeable rod that I can bend with heat. A shape rod. What could possibly go wrong, right? Nothing at all. Except everything. Wear a respirator. Alright, now we're gluing this guy together with contact cement. It's time for the real fun part, sanding. Oh yeah, I'm using a belt sander for this and a Dremel, and you know what? You are actually fine with just a Dremel alone, but you know, belt sander is just faster. If you mess up, just keep sanding until it kinda looks like a cleaver. Seriously, the messier the better with this one. Now let's carve out some random letters. I have no idea what they mean, or if they mean anything at all, but it's gonna look cool when it's painted later. It does not have to make sense. Most of this will be covered up anyways. And that is the base of the cleaver done, and I have to say I'm actually happier with it than I expected to be, because most of the time engraving in foam just sucks. However, we're just gonna cover it up later on anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Next up though is gonna be the handle, and I'm gonna use a PVC pipe for this, but as you can see, this one is straight, as most PVC pipes are, so I will have to shape this using a heat gun. And here's a cool tip. Use a respirator for that, because that's very toxic, and you know, not dying is a win in my book. Now I quickly noticed that bending a PVC pipe sucks. Google told me to just use sand maybe, and yeah, I had to go get that first, so I did. It kinda worked out. It's not perfect, but perfect is boring. You know, just put the sanding there and shape it, that's it. But wait, shaping is just half the battle. The real tricky part is adding the thing that's gonna hold the cleaver itself. So I made this, let's say, simplified drawing to show you how it would work. It's locked in place with a lever pressured by a spring. Once I hold the lever down, it's no longer locked and free to move to the other gap. And then once I let the lever go, it locks itself again. Alright, time to make this thing. I'm just eyeballing some patterns that I can just add onto the pipe and hope this works. I also cut out a slit for the spring. Now I got this really strong spring from Amazon, and I'm just gonna glue that to a foam half dowel and just slide that inside the PVC pipe. I then just put this thing into place using a fiberglass rod. Alright, so I put everything together, and as you can see, it opens, it closes, and it even locks in quite nicely, which I didn't expect to happen, but it did. Now of course I need something to lock it in place when it opens, and that's why I added the spring. I need some durability here. So I'm making this lever solid. I'm using a piece of shape rod once again, and adding around it, it's gonna be a lot of foam that I just Dremel into shape. You know, it's gotta be at least somewhat presentable. Now I'm drilling a hole so that the lever can go into the handle. Alright, so I'm having a back to the drawing board type moment, because I was making everything out of foam, and it kinda works, but I just thought it was a bit too flimsy and a bit too messy, so I'm making the exact same thing, but this time out of Sintra, which is pretty much PVC. I'm also gonna add some Worbla on this part, because I feel like there's too much pressure going on here and the friction is just gonna destroy the whole thing. And then I replaced all the foam hinge bits with Sintra. It's literally the same procedure like with foam. You cut it out, heat shape it, tada, it works. Then finally I added some stuff to the handle. In my opinion, it just gives it a bit more depth, I guess. Just cut it, glue it, done. The bolts you see are just made by cutting some salami slices from a dowel, that's it.
When everything was glued down, I went all out with a Dremel and a knife to create some rough edges and cuts. The heat gun also helps to make it pop even more.
Anyway, this finally concludes the building part and now I can move on to priming. I just used some plastic because it's fast and easy and I just gave it 2 layers. Then I used some Cospaint metallics and some brown to just do some base coloring. Alright, so I'm done priming the whole thing and I also gave it some base coloring with Cospaints, but let's be real here, that doesn't really matter because now I have to cover the entire thing up with bandages and blood. It's about layers, I guess. This is the fun part and also what makes it look so iconic in the first place. But before I move on to the fake blood, I first have to do all the bandaging. For the bandages, I just bought some canvas fabric online. I will link it down below. But anyway, I just cut out some straps and wrapped it around the handle and blade. I used some super glue on some spots to keep it in place, but don't overdo it, of course, because it kinda bleeds through. To make it look old and dirty, like me, I just put it on fire to burn the edges and add some markings. Be safe when doing this. Don't burn your house down, you know, it's flames. So use paint instead, maybe. Yeah, just use paint. I also mixed some black acrylic paints with a lot of water to just dampen the cloth and make it look very old, I guess. And then it was time for my favorite part, the fake blood. Now I want this to look real, but it also has to look wet even when dried out. I looked up a lot of ways to make this, so I'm gonna combine all of them and see what happens. I applied it by just painting it on and throwing it on. Doesn't really matter, whatever floats your boat, it's messy, so make it look messy. When I started to question if Instagram would ban me for posting this, I knew I was done. And then when I'm done with the fake blood, I just like to give it a nice layer of... I just love. I actually use at the end of every video. It's great for finishing any prop you would make. Yeah, it's Lucas spray. Couldn't tell you which one though. I think it's satin, but both would work. Alright, it has been a full day since I finished this and everything still looks wet, but don't be fooled. Everything has completely dried and that's what I wanted because I didn't want the blood to dry up and be brown and boring. It still looks exactly the same like when I just applied it, which is great, mission accomplished. And of course it still works. Would be bad if it didn't. Now if you want to make this thing yourself, you can. The blueprints will be available in the description down below, just like all the materials that were used. If you have any more questions about this build, you can just ask them in the comments down below or anywhere on our social media or Discord or whatever. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Skyshark and I will see you in the next one.